Hello everyone, Daniel here from the Next Issue Podcast. On today's video, I'll be doing a review for What If Season 2, Episode 2, What If Peter Quill Attacked Earth's Mightiest Heroes. Uh, so before I get into the synopsis, as I go into the cast, there'll probably be some spoilers for like the characters that show up, which also may give away a little bit of the plot. So keep that in mind. So maybe spoilers ahead as I talk about the synopsis and the cast for the voice actors. So in this one, we have a young Peter Quill comes back to Earth, and only the Earth's mightiest heroes can come together to confront him. But also there lies a bigger threat. This stars Jeffrey Wright as the Watcher, Michael Douglas as Doctor Pym, aka Ant Man, Haley Atwell as Peggy Carter, John Slattery as Howard Stark, Kurt Russell as Ego, Chris Hemsworth as Thor, Doctor Lawrence Fishburne as Dr. Bill Foster, aka Goliath, Sebastian Stan, Bucky Barnes, aka the Winter Soldier, Atanda Kani voices King T'Chaka, aka the Black Panther, and Madeline McGraw voices Hope Van Dyne, and Carrie Tombazian voices Wendy Lawson, aka Marvel, who in the Captain Marvel movie was originally portrayed by Annette Bening. So for the most part, they got pretty much everyone back. So this was a really interesting one. I think the premise and the first few minutes of this to me were really interesting, right? We have a young Peter Quill that was actually delivered to Ego by Yondu, as opposed to Yondu kind of keeping him and having him grow up, become Star Lord, all that stuff, like we know from the main MCU movies. But in this version, he connects with Ego as a young child, and he just wants to kind of come back home, but he comes back with all the powers of a celestial that are maybe not fully in his control. He really just wants to go home, and that's kind of where Shield, or the form of Shield that is currently out there, uh, figures out they need a team to put together to stop them. Now, really interesting for the writers of the MCU to kind of try to figure out who is kind of available at the time of all this happening. We are in the mid '80s, I believe. So of course, Hank Pym would be around. Peggy Carter, of course, working for Shield. Howard Stark, same, working for Shield. Um, I feel like Thor is kind of brought in as the big gun, but it's easy because you can kind of bring in Thor almost at any point, right? These are beings that live forever or live for a very long time, and is also beings that are watching the universe. So a celestial event like this would definitely catch the attention of Asgard. Um, I think bringing in Bill Foster, Goliath, very smart choice because we know he has a history with Hank Pym. I was very surprised that they brought in the Winter Soldier. Uh, Obviously, in this version of the MCU, the Winter Soldier had not been revealed because that happens way later on. But Peggy and Howard do recognize Bucky, so it's kind of interesting that there is a dynamic there. Also, we get to see King T'Chaka in action as the Black Panther because we knew that he was the former Black Panther. We saw it in the flashback scenes of the first Black Panther movie. And then, interestingly enough, we get to see Marvel, who it's not fully like I don't think she fully explains to the group like what her deal is. They just know that she's a very good scientist and has a really fast ship. She's helped them out with the Tesseract, so like that's kind of where all that goes. We don't see a young Nick Fury, which is interesting. Maybe this was way before his time, as we know in the '90s in the Captain Marvel movie, he was still kind of a desk field agent for Shield. So he hadn't really rose through the ranks in the '80s. Um, but yeah, I think the story itself and the twist, putting the team together, that was kind of fun. I feel like the premise then kind of goes in the direction that you would expect it to go, where like Ego's really the threat, and because they're not gonna have the Avengers fully fight a young child, right? There is a fight, but they just kind of capture him, and I think that's fun. But it was you have to play it safe. You can really have the Avengers, Earth's Mightiest Heroes, confronting a child and maybe even like destroying a child, even if it happens to be a Celestial. So Ego does end up being the main threat. They all kind of team up. I do like that they have a young Hope Van Dyne kind of come in, and she's the one that kind of saves the day. She is the one that actually talks to a young Peter, and they share. They both lost their mothers, and they have that in common, so they share on that. So there's some good stuff. There's some fun stuff here. I think it's a fun premise. I don't know that the execution fully nails it. There's some really exciting moments of just seeing like some of these characters that we've never seen fight. Especially like seeing Goliath be the first one to like kind of turn big, like I think that's pretty cool. Maybe some of that work is what Hank ended up basing his others, his particles to also get big in the future, like how Ant-Man gets big. So really interesting, of course, seeing Peggy and Howard still be involved this much. But yeah, overall, I think this one it wasn't my favorite one. I think so far I enjoyed the first one more than this one, but this one was also still pretty enjoyable. These are like 25 minutes long, so it's not a lot. Still, the animation, I know a lot of people don't really enjoy it. I don't mind it. It's kind of grown on me since the first season. I was talking during the live stream that we had this weekend. It reminds me almost like it's a little blocky. It reminds me of one of my favorite artists, Phil Noto, like his, where it's like it looks a little bit photorealistic, but also looks a little bit blocky and stylized. So it's really interesting. It's an interesting mix. I hope that the animators are getting enough time to work on all this stuff. But yeah, overall, really cool to hear all these actors come back to do some different stuff. And we'll be talking about more of these in the future. So stay tuned for that. So let me know what you thought about this episode of What If in the comments. As always, thank you for watching, everyone. Remember to share, like, subscribe, hit the bell so you know when we go live. That is most Saturdays, 10 a.m. Central Standard Time. Stay tuned. We have more comic reviews, trailer reactions, TV recaps, all that fun stuff here in the channel. Thanks for watching, everyone.